How to start a nonprofit organization in 2021, otherwise known as a 501c3 organization. So, a nonprofit organization is a business entity in which your main goal is to not make a profit, but rather to make money in order to expand on a social cause. So a social cause could be something like feeding the homeless or helping out victims of harsh circumstances. But of course, as tax professionals, we cannot ignore that having a nonprofit has some incredible tax benefits for its owners. For example, 501c3 organizations are completely tax exempt, which allows them to use more money towards their desired social causes. So you pretty much win in both ways, okay? You save money on taxes and at the same time, you're able to support your favorite social cause. So in this video, what I wanna do is show you exactly how to start a nonprofit organization step by step. Stay tuned. Hey there, I'm Sean with Life Accounting, the accounting company that saves people from high taxes and low profits. We make a lot of videos on how to get started, the type of business entities that you may want to look at selecting, as well as how you can maximize your tax planning strategies. So if you like content like that, please click that like button and subscribe to our channel to support us out and continue to grow yourself. All right, so why start a nonprofit organization? Well, if your goal is to support a cause for the long term, then you're going to need an organization because you get a lot of great benefits. For starters, your ability to receive funding from sources like grants are significantly increased because once people see that you are an established 501c3, then two things start to happen. First, the level of trust in your organization goes up because setting up a nonprofit organization is not easy. And secondly, and probably more important, when people actually donate to you and give you money, then they can actually use that donation as a tax write-off, which is considered a charitable donation on their tax return. So it becomes a win-win for everyone. So you get a donation and they get a tax write-off or a tax deduction. For example, I believe Google gives up to $10,000 for nonprofits to advertise their causes on Google, and then Google's able to write off that expense. Another great benefit of nonprofit organizations is that you get limited liability protection, which is basically the same type of protection that you would get when you own something like an LLC, right? You get limited liability protection, which usually means that if your nonprofit were to get sued, then your personal assets are protected against any claim about your nonprofit. A third and powerful benefit of owning a nonprofit organization is your ability to hire. There are thousands, no, millions of people who just want to do good and are willing to work for free. And then on top of that, there are many companies that are willing to give you a discount on their products or their services in order to support a cause that they believe in. And that ability to raise what I would call time is sometimes even stronger than your ability to raise money. And of course, from our tax planning perspective, the biggest benefit of having a nonprofit is being able to have a tax exemption status once you incorporate your 501c3. Which basically means that the corporation or the nonprofit doesn't have to pay any taxes. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about how to start a nonprofit organization, step by step. Starting with step number one, ask yourself 6 big questions. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. So starting with who. Who will be involved? Because when you incorporate a nonprofit organization, depending on the state that you live in, you may be required. Let me repeat. You may be required to have a certain amount of directors or people a part of your nonprofit organization. For example, in the state of Georgia, your nonprofit must include at least 3 directors not related to each other. On the other hand, if you are starting a nonprofit organization in the state of California, then you need at least 3 directors not related to each other. You also need a president, a secretary, and a treasurer or some type of CFO. So in Georgia, you need 3 people. In California, you're required to have 6 people. But hey, the main point here is that you want to make sure you have enough people on board required to start your nonprofit. The next big question is what? So the number one mistake I see people making is just simply thinking because they have a nonprofit, money is just gonna fall from the sky and they're gonna be able to do anything they want to do. But listen, raising money is hard and running an organization is even harder. So you want to think very carefully when you're incorporating your business and thinking about your business plan, what's your budget, what's your mission, and why would someone donate to you as opposed to another nonprofit organization? So big things to consider here. The next question to ask yourself is when. I know, right? Most people, when I say when, they say right now. But getting your nonprofit incorporated the right way takes a lot of time. You're going to have to work with your state and get articles of incorporation, which I'm gonna go over in a few steps in a minute. And you're gonna wanna apply for your tax exemption status. Now, all of this can take a few weeks up to a few months to finalize. So just make sure you're considering that when you think about your timeline. Now, the next 2 questions to ask yourself are where and why. And I'm just gonna assume if you're watching this video that you know exactly where you wanna be established and you know why you're doing it. But of course, if you haven't, then stop and think before you get incorporated. And the last question to ask yourself is how, okay? And this goes back to having a great business plan. But what I want you to do is think hard about how you want things to go. Because again, running a nonprofit is hard. It takes a lot of time, and if you're not prepared to manage it, then you need to come up with a plan. All right, moving on to step number 2, choose a name for your nonprofit organization. Now, chances are, if you're watching this video, then you're probably already excited about starting your nonprofit organization, and I'm willing to bet that you've likely thought of a name as well. Hey, Sean, look, I'm drowning in nonprofit business names. Okay, so I just have 2 quick tips for naming your nonprofit organization. Tip number 1, choose a name that identifies with your cause. So, for example, when you hear a nonprofit name like the American Cancer Society, it's very clear what they stand for and what they help with, right? It's something around cancer. So make sure that whatever name that you choose, people can easily identify what your organization stands for. So number 2, once you have a name in mind, make sure that it's not taken. So what you're gonna wanna do is run a name search using your state tools, such as going to your Secretary of State website and then doing a name search. You can also use some federal tools to do a name search, or you can run a domain search or a website URL search to see if there are any websites with the same name that you are thinking about when it comes to your nonprofit. Now, the next step is all about how to actually get your nonprofit incorporated. But before we go on, let me just take a moment to ask you, are you enjoying this video so far? If you are, awesome. Please do us a huge favor and hit that like button below. It helps our channel out a lot, and it also spreads this video around to more people who want to learn how to start their nonprofit organization. Moving on to step number 3, get incorporated. So getting your nonprofit incorporated is very similar to getting really any business incorporated, even when you're setting up a business like an LLC or a limited liability company. Now, regulations do vary greatly from state to state. So the steps that I'm about to share with you right now shouldn't be taken as a substitute for competent legal counsel. And please always do your own research, okay? Even if you have legal counsel, I would still advise doing your own research. Okay, so when you're filing for your articles of incorporation, also called certificate of incorporation in some states, you're going to want to do the following. One, get a registered agent. So your registered agent can be you or someone else that you appoint. It can even be an outside third-party team like a legal team that you've hired. Now, the registered agent is mainly responsible for sending and receiving any legal documents. So what you're going to want to do is put that registered agent's information such as their address, email, number, full name, of course, etc. when you're actually filing for your articles of incorporation. The second thing you're going to want to do is select your officers and directors. So as I mentioned earlier, some states may require you to have a certain amount of officers and directors. And while you're filing your nonprofit, you will need to list the names of those officers and directors. So of course, make sure you have their full names and their contact information, such as their email address, their number, and their physical address when you're ready to get incorporated. 3, you may need to provide a certificate of disclosure. So this is simply a document that basically confirms there has been no failure on the part of the nonprofit or any of its directors or officers to disclose all the important information. This could be things such as reports, forms, statements, or other documents filed by the nonprofit. Number 4, you may need to provide proof of a corporate name. Now, this of course is pretty self-explanatory and usually something that is easily done, especially if you are filing your nonprofit online. They'll do all the work for you pretty much. And 5, and finally, you're gonna have to pay filing fees, okay? Again, pretty straightforward, but of course, filing fees vary from state to state depending on where you decide to file your nonprofit. But in order to get your articles of incorporation, you're going to have to pay some filing fees. Now, in addition to these 5 things, it may also be beneficial for you to include bylaws or an operating agreement for which the nonprofit organization will be managed, just in case you end up having a legal issue with any of your directors or managers or co-owners. Inside of that operating agreement, you may want to adopt policies such as a conflict of interest or compensation policies so that everything is laid out as clear as possible. Now, once you have completed your articles of incorporation, then after a few weeks, you should be approved, and then you're ready to move on to step number 4. Step number 4, file for federal tax-exempt status, that 501c3 status. All right, so this is a big one and probably the most important aspect of starting a nonprofit organization. So when you're ready to file for federal tax-exempt status for your nonprofit, there are several forms that you can choose from. Each form has a different fee associated with using them, but please do not choose a form based on the filing fees, okay? Just because one form is cheaper than another form does not mean it's the right fit for you. So again, do your own research or seek out legal counsel for deciding which form that you need to choose. Now, one of the most popular ways to apply for that tax-exempt status is to use Form 1023-EZ. This is a form for organizations with gross receipts less than $50,000 or have assets under management of under $250,000. Of course, as you grow beyond those financial thresholds, you may need to reapply using something like a regular Form 1023. Okay, another important note is that whoever is filing these forms must have a registered account with the IRS. Along with filing for this exempt status, you're going to want to file for Form SS4 so that you can get a Federal Employer Identification Number, or EIN for short, which will basically be required if you want to set up a bank account, hire people, you use it for paying staff, and other nonprofit identification measures. So that's how you file for your tax-exempt status. Now, let me be clear that not every application is accepted. The IRS will review, they're going to make sure you fit some requirements, and they may possibly correspond with you, which would mean they're asking more questions or requesting more documentation. Now, after all that, the process of receiving a determination letter from the IRS may take anywhere from a few weeks to several months. And as of right now, as of July 2021, while I'm recording this video, we are seeing a lot of delays coming from the IRS. And sometimes, after weeks of waiting, you still may need to submit additional information to the IRS for them to be able to make an official ruling on your application. Now, once you do hear back from the IRS determining that your 501c3 has been obtained, then congratulations, your nonprofit is set up. But there is still one more step that I want you to be open to taking. Step number 5, keep up with your state filings, compliance, and ongoing reporting. One of my all-time favorite quotes is from Stephen Covey when he says, "Think with the end in mind." So of course, I don't want to leave you with just how to get started, but I also want to let you know what it takes to maintain your nonprofit in the months and years that follow. So many states and local governments will require you to complete more filings to receive recognition as a tax-exempt entity. So remember, in the last step, we applied for federal exempt status. So now we need to let the state know. The good news here is that usually when the federal government recognizes your nonprofit as tax exempt, the state will follow suit. But you still have to go through some additional filings and fees for local compliance, such as registering before you start any fundraising. You may need to register before engaging in any type of lobbying. You may need to secure permits and licenses for things such as the goods and services that your nonprofit provides. So let's say, for example, that you are serving food, you might need a license for that. If you are helping children, you may need a license for that. Or if you're hosting an event in a certain public area, then you may want to go out and get a permit for that. Also, to improve your tax status, you're going to want to file for tax exemption at the state level so you can avoid doing things like paying property taxes or sales taxes. So overall, if you want to keep your nonprofit in a healthy position, what I want you to do is think about these 4 things. 1, you need to set up your internal processes. So stuff like how you're going to hire staff, how you're going to manage your money through your accounting system. Okay, 2, you need to keep track of all your regular activity, such as the board meetings that you're having with the key officers and the directors that are a part of your organization. 3rd key, you need to report taxes withheld every single quarter, which includes your federal taxes, your state taxes, and possibly even local taxes. And then 4, you also need to keep up with annual reporting. So some of the things you need to report annually is your Form 990. You also need to file an annual tax return, of course, and you want to make sure you're renewing your nonprofit and paying your renewal fees. All right, so now that you made it this far, I have one additional bonus tip for you, and that is to ask yourself, do you need a nonprofit organization? Because you may not, depending on what your goals are. So ask yourself some of these questions. Are you just trying to help out one person or a small group of people? Are you just trying to put on an event to raise awareness or raise a little bit of money? Is it just a one-time tax write-off, like you just made a lot of money and you're looking for a huge tax write-off? If the answer to any of these questions is yes, then you need to reconsider if you need to go about incorporating a nonprofit. Because for example, you could put on a big event, help out a lot of people, support a cause, and still get a huge personal tax deduction for doing so. However, of course, if your goal is more long-term, like you want to help people for many, many years to come, then of course starting a nonprofit organization can be a great option for you. All right, so that's it for this video, guys. I would love to talk to everyone in the comment section. So if you enjoyed it, please write us a comment, ask us any questions you want, or just share your overall feedback and let's talk about it. All right, we have 2 more videos that are coming up next. So if you haven't checked those out already, make sure you do, and I'll see you over there.